On the night of October 18th, 2019, inside a quiet suburban neighborhood in Lexington, Kentucky, police officers responded to a report of gunshots. The caller, a neighbor, described hearing two sharp cracks, followed by a third, and then silence. When officers enter the home, they make a chilling discovery. Two men lie dead in the living room. Tyler McCord, Jared Ellis. Both shot multiple times. No signs of forced entry. No robbery. Something personal happened. But the strangest detail isn't the bodies. It's a paper lying on the kitchen counter. A piece of printer paper with names written on it and circled in red ink. Emma, Tyler McCord, Brandon, Jared Ellis, Kaylee, Chris Vaughn. 3 children, 3 different men, not one of them the husband of the woman who lived in this house. And that husband, U.S. Army veteran Daniel Brooks, is missing. What investigators didn't realize in that moment was that this single sheet of paper wasn't just a clue. It was the motive for a tragedy that had been building for over a decade. Typical of suburban Kentucky life. The Brooks family home sits at the end of a cul-de-sac. White fence, kids' bicycles on the lawn, a swing set in the backyard. Neighbors describe the family as stable, kind, quiet, normal. Daniel Brooks, 50, former U.S. Army infantryman, served 2 tours in Afghanistan, calm, steady, disciplined, worked maintenance at a local university. Described as the kind of dad who never raised his voice. Melanie Brooks, 45, stay-at-home mom, outgoing, charming, active in community events, known for always being around other parents, always chatting. The children, Emma, 16, Brandon, 13, Kaylee, 10. Everyone believes they're Daniel's biological kids. Even Daniel believes that. But there are rumors. A few neighbors recall seeing men visit when Daniel was deployed. One says, "Melanie always had guy friends. We didn't think much of it, but in hindsight, yeah, something was off." But no one, not even Daniel, knew how deep those secrets ran until one small plastic tube shattered his entire world. 2018. Daniel injures his knee at work, tearing a ligament. During physical therapy, a nurse casually mentions DNA ancestry tests. Lots of veterans get them. Fun way to explore heritage. Daniel thinks it'd be cool to learn more about his family roots. He orders a 23andMe kit. He spits, seals, and sends it off. Weeks later, the results come back, and something doesn't add up. 23andMe compares his DNA with potential relatives, and it doesn't match with Emma, his eldest daughter. Not even close. Daniel rechecks the app, refreshes it, then slowly, fearfully, realizes the truth. Quote, Emma wasn't his. Unquote. He confronts Melanie. She breaks down, crying. She claims, "It was a one-time thing, I swear. I'm so sorry, Daniel." He wants to believe her. He's a forgiving man. He's a father. He loves his children, so he tries to move past it. But the seed of doubt has been planted, and it grows
Daniel can't stop thinking about it. If Melanie lied once, how many times had she lied? One night, while Melanie watches TV, he quietly takes the kids' toothbrushes. He sends samples to a private lab. 2 weeks later, the results arrive. This time, he prints them out, terrified to look. And then he sees it. Brandon, not his. Kaylee, not his. 3 kids, 3 fathers. None of them him. His knees buckle. He sits on the floor staring at the papers. For a man who built his life on stability, loyalty, and truth, this was a nuclear bomb. He circles each man's name in red ink. Tyler McCord, Jared Ellis, Chris Vaughn. Then, like a soldier preparing for a mission, he begins to track them down. Daniel wasn't the man he'd been the day before. Betrayal doesn't just break people. Sometimes it rewires them. Visit number 1. Tyler McCord. Tyler, 40, Melanie's high school boyfriend. Daniel first saw Tyler from Melanie's high school pictures. They seemed to have a good number of pics together. Then they barely met on Daniel and Melanie's wedding day. Melanie had earlier told Daniel they were casual friends. This new discovery nearly wrenched Daniel's heart apart. With a touch of betrayal mixed with anger, Daniel pays Tyler a visit. Tyler is surprised when Daniel knocks. Daniel confronted him, but Tyler plainly denied the allegation. So Daniel brought out the DNA test report and shoved it in his face. Tyler admits he and Melanie hooked up in 2002. He swears he never knew about Emma. He's nervous, apologetic. His wife would leave him if she finds out about this, and probably take half of all he had worked for. Daniel's anger simmers. Visit number 2. Jared Ellis. Jared, 45, Melanie's former co-worker. Why has Melanie chosen to hurt me this much? Why has she had affairs with people I know? Daniel thought in his heart. Daniel meets and confronts Jared. He's not apologetic. He's annoyed. He tells Daniel, "Dude, she told me you weren't around. What did you expect? Someone's got to oil her engine, or do you want her to die of loneliness?" This enrages Daniel. Something fractures inside him. He clenched his fists, but he managed to calm his rage down and left so he does not do something crazy. Visit number 3. Home again. Daniel confronts Melanie again. She's defensive, aggressive, panicking. She lies, contradicts herself, blames him for being deployed. She realized the cat was already out of the bag. Apology won't make a difference. Daniel sleeps in his truck for several nights, alone, cold, broken, and becoming increasingly unstable. 100 thoughts running through his mind every minute. On October 12th, Daniel made a decision. He wasn't going to talk anymore. He was done asking questions.
Evening of October 18th. Daniel made a plan. There is no going back. Kids at Melanie's sister's house. Daniel texts Tyler, "Can you come over? I need to talk about Emma." Tyler arrives at 8:12 p.m. Curious and confused. Inside the home, Daniel confronts him. Tyler tries to calm him down, but Daniel snaps. Gunfire erupts. Tyler collapses near the couch and being hit in the head. His skull slightly open with particles of his brain splashed on the couch. Blood gushed out from his head and littered the floor of the living room. At 8:24 p.m., Jared Ellis pulls into the driveway. Daniel had also texted him. He felt reluctant to visit Daniel at first, but he went anyway. Jared enters, sees Tyler's body, spins to run. Daniel fires again. 3 shots. Jared falls in the doorway, crawled a little, then turned, face up, begging Daniel to spare his life. Daniel took the 4th shot. The close-range bullet went through his heart and came out through the back. Daniel stands between both bodies, shaking, gasping, muttering, "Those were my kids, my kids." He drops the gun, stares at the wall for nearly 10 minutes. Then he gets in his truck and leaves. But he isn't finished. He drives to Chris Vaughn's house. What happened next proves that even the most broken man can still find a fragment of humanity left inside him.
Chris Vaughn's home. Daniel knocks. Chris isn't there, but Chris's wife answers. She recognizes Daniel from pictures Melanie posted years ago. She says something that breaks Daniel completely. "Chris told me Melanie said you knew, that you weren't the father, and that you didn't care anymore." Daniel begins crying uncontrollably on her porch. It's the first time he's cried since the DNA results. Chris's wife calls police after he leaves, shaken by the encounter. This is important. Chris never knew. He was lied to as well. Daniel drives away, aimless, exhausted, hollow. He no longer wants revenge, but he also no longer wants to live. But before Daniel could disappear, police were already closing in. The neighbors who heard the gunshot called 911. The police responded immediately, and within minutes, 2 police vehicles pulled up at the crime scene. Ballistic evidence were found at the scene as more police vehicles arrived, while the place was mapped out with tape for proper investigation. Few minutes later, the forensics team arrived and mapped out the bullet trajectories. When Melanie was taken in for interview, she lied to cover up her deeds, but the detectives already had more than enough evidence which revealed what truly happened. The forensics pointed out that the bullets were fired by a professional, most likely a veteran. With Daniel missing, all fingers point to him. Phone records also showed that Daniel tested both men to come over. Eventually, the detectives realized that the DNA sheet wasn't random. It was the trigger. Detectives ping Daniel's cell phone. It traces to a rural back road. At 3:42 a.m., patrol cars surround his truck. Daniel steps out, hands raised. He doesn't resist. He doesn't speak. He just says, "They weren't mine." But the investigation wasn't over because the public still didn't know the full truth. The case spreads across U.S. news. DNA betrayal leads to double murder. Veteran snaps after paternity fraud. 3 kids, 3 fathers. Social media is split. Some say, "He's a monster." Others say, "This is what betrayal does to people." Melanie becomes the target of widespread public hatred. She goes into hiding. Courtroom drama. Prosecution frames it as premeditated, calculated, cold-blooded. Defense frames it as emotional collapse, PTSD from war, severe betrayal trauma, long-term psychological abuse. Melanie testifies, but appears defensive, uncooperative. Jurors judge her negatively. A psychologist explains Daniel's trauma: deployment stress, repeated deception, paternity shock, identity collapse. After 5 hours of deliberation, verdict: guilty of 2 counts of murder. Sentence: 40 years to life. Daniel shows no emotion. He simply whispers, "Tell my kids I love them." Tyler's and Jared's families mourn deeply. The community is shaken. The 3 children are placed with relatives. Therapy begins. Melanie leaves Kentucky entirely. But the final twist comes months later. Daniel receives a letter in prison. It's from Chris Vaughn, the one father Daniel didn't kill. Inside is one sentence: "They may not share your DNA, but you raised them. You'll always be their father too." Daniel weeps. End of story, but not the end of the questions. This case forces us to confront painful questions. Was Daniel's sentence fair? Could the system have prevented this? And what does betrayal do to the human mind? What would you have done if you discovered all 3 of your children weren't biologically yours? Sometimes the truth doesn't just hurt, it destroys. And that brings us to the end of one of the most haunting and emotionally complex cases we've ever covered on this channel. A story that began with one man's quiet search for truth, a simple DNA test, a moment of curiosity, a desire for clarity, and ended with a revelation so devastating that it fractured every part of the life he thought he knew. A veteran, a father, a husband, a man who had already carried the weight of battlefields, trauma, and sacrifice, only to return home to a different kind of war, one hidden behind the walls of his own family. For years, he believed he was raising 3 children who shared his blood, his legacy, his name. Every birthday, every scraped knee, every first step, moments he cherished, moments he thought were built on truth. But the DNA results tore that illusion apart in seconds. Not one child biologically his. Not one connection real in the genetic sense. A betrayal with roots that stretched back years, hidden in silence, deceit, and secrets that were destined to erupt. As investigators retraced the events that followed, the picture that emerged was not just of rage, but of emotional collapse. A man pushed beyond the breaking point. A trust violated so deeply it unlocked wounds he never had the tools to heal. And in that moment of overwhelm, when pain turned into impulse, tragedy struck. A double murder, 2 lives lost, a family destroyed, a future rewritten in blood and irreversible decisions. This case forces us to examine the delicate balance of truth. How much can one person endure before everything shatters? How far can betrayal push someone who is already fragile? And how many tragedies could be prevented if people sought help before hurt? Behind every headline, every police report, every courtroom verdict, there are human beings caught in the collision of emotion, trauma, and circumstance. There are victims who deserved better, children whose lives will never be the same, and a community left to pick up pieces that may never fully fit together again. If this deep dive kept you on the edge of your seat, if it made you think, question, or reflect, please take a moment to like this video. It helps the channel more than you know and allows us to continue bringing you in-depth, carefully researched stories like this one. Be sure to share this video with fellow true crime followers, people who appreciate not just the crime, but the human story behind it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload, because we have many more cases, shocking, tragic, twisting, coming your way. Stories that challenge our understanding of justice, truth, and the human heart. Thank you for watching, thank you for supporting, and thank you for taking the time to walk through this difficult case with us. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and take care of yourselves and those around you. Your host, True Crime Chronicles, signing off.